All right, so we have talked a little bit about habit stacking. We've talked a little bit about habits and routines. And I want to talk about some stuff that you might come up against that may be a little bit frustrating. And I know a lot of the time what happens is when things get frustrating, sometimes we just give up. But the cool thing about habit stacking and understanding kind of this framework is there are a few things that are like pretty kind of normal roadblocks. And then we also want to talk a little bit about like turning up the volume and turning down the volume. So some of the things that might hold you back from either creating a habit or sticking to a habit can be having really higher unrealistic expectations. And so this is like, I talked about this in the last video. For example, if you're not going to the gym any days a week and all of a sudden you set yourself the habit of like, hey, every day when I finish my coffee, I'm going to go to the gym. That feels like a really big thing to take on, and it may be an unrealistic expectation. So we want to think about like what could hold me back from making this happen, whether it's someone else, whether it's time, whether it's energy, and then we want to really scale that back. We want to look at how can I make it so easy that right now it really doesn't take a lot of thought or a lot of energy for me to do this. We want to think about this as like making it so easy that it almost seems silly, right? Because we want you to be able to exceed your own expectations. And so you might be thinking like, this is too easy. That's awesome. That's actually exactly where you want to be. I hope you think it's too easy when you decide on something that you like to do. Another roadblock that comes up is an unhelpful environment. And this can be something that sometimes when we just make certain shifts, that can be really helpful. I'll give you an example. We may notice that our partner or our roommate or whoever it is keeps food that triggers some type of craving in a very visible place in the kitchen. What we actually want to do is we want to create the habit of eating fruit for breakfast instead of cereal or whatever it is. And so we want to look at how can you change certain things about how that environment is set up so it can facilitate this process. I'll give you an example. I had a client who one of his little habits that he wanted to create is eating more fruit. And so we know that he drinks coffee every morning. So I was like, well, why don't we just put a piece of fruit on top of the coffee maker? And so that made what was previously an unhelpful environment very helpful because he knew that he was going to go to drink some coffee and there was a piece of fruit right there. And so it was right in his face. It was way easier to eat. And that may seem really silly because the actual habit that he was working on is just putting the fruit on top of the coffee maker. It wasn't actually eating the fruit. And that sounds so simple, but it leads to amazing results. You may also be finding that you're complicating the tasks. So you're adding something that is multiple steps. We want to think about to start out, just like going back to the seed analogy that I talked about before, we want this to be so simple that you don't have to think about it. So if it has more than one step, if there's complicated tasks associated with it, if you need certain tools that aren't easily accessible, that can make things really, really difficult. So for example, if, going back to the gym example, instead of saying going to the gym, which includes things like putting on your workout clothes, getting your gym bag, getting a water bottle, getting in the car, going to the gym, that's a lot of different steps. So let's uncomplicate the task and make the task simply putting on your workout clothes. A lot more simple and takes you one step closer to where you want to go. Or having an unclear plan. I think a great way to make a plan very clear is to say, after I do this, I will do this. And so understanding whatever that anchor is, say that anchor is brushing your teeth. After I brush my teeth, I will do a down dog stretch, for example. Simple down dog stretch is one thing. You know exactly when you're going to do it. It may even be helpful to say where you're going to do it. After I brush my teeth, I will do a down dog stretch in the living room. You know exactly what's happening. You know when it's happening. You know how it's happening. And so a great way to kind of take you through a litmus test of understanding if what you are doing is actually doable for you, if you're coming across some roadblocks, is, and you've probably heard me do this in my sessions, is from 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can do this every day? And you want to be at like a 9 or a 10. If you're anything lower than that, it's probably too hard. Either your expectations are too high, the environment is unhelpful, the task is too complicated, or your plan is unclear. And honestly, beating yourself up about not being able to achieve something doesn't make it hard, or doesn't make it easier to achieve. But making the thing that you're trying to achieve easier does make it easier to achieve. And next time we're going to talk a little bit about how to be your own cheerleader and why that is super, super important when you're looking to create solid habits.